we're going to jump in with our first cup segment this morning, and we're going to be talking about an article that Wes Royer reposted on LinkedIn. He found it on Crazy Stupid Tech about boom, bubble, bust, boom. Why should AI be different? And it was a really interesting article talking about all the hype around AI and comparing it to the internet bubble of the late 90s and asking why should it be different? Is it different? Is what we're seeing now different? What are the implications for us in our industries and in technology companies and in our careers specifically? So it's going to argue that every major technology follows the same cycle: excitement, inflated expectations, a painful crash, then real value. The author asks why AI should be any different, and then makes the case that we've allowed hype and fear to reshape the narrative instead of focusing on durable value. So we're going to look at where AI is actually creating lift and where we're still fooling ourselves. It's going to be a really interesting conversation, but let's get started by meeting our panel. Let me introduce everybody here. First of all, I want to welcome back the godfather of product management education and CEO of Product Growth Leaders. He does not have a guitar on his back today, but we'll get him there eventually. Welcome back, Steve Johnson.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and I think our next guy, I think he's a guitarist as well. He's the man who builds synthetic personas for breakfast. You met him here last weekend at Product Camp. Always has a reality check ready. It's Mark Michelson, who is the regional director for the AI Collective and the founder and managing director of Threads Market Research. Welcome back, Mark Michelson.
Good morning. Cheers.
Good morning. How are you? Good looking cup there, Mark.
I love it.
All right. Let's see here. So when hype spikes and understanding crashes, she finds the truth underneath. Say hello to our friend Blossom Ononekwu.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
Hey, Blossom, welcome. Glad to have you. All right. And last but not least, strategy first, AI second. He's a product thinker who cares about what actually works and found the article that we're talking about today. Welcome back, Wes Royer. Hi, Wes. How are you?
Oh, thanks for having me back.
You bet. Thanks for reposting this article and making sure we saw it.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's jump in. Let's get started. I'm gonna pivot over to Steve. Steve, you've been through this. You've seen the cycle play out in different ways. Is what we're seeing now the same or different? What was your take on the article, and what do you think about the market today, especially as it comes to AI?
Well, the important part is that I read the wrong article. In fact, the article I read was talking all about how product management is going to change materially in the new world. And I disagreed with every single word of the article, except for this graphic. Yes, work is heavier than family, health, and sleep. Other than that, every other thing in the article I disagreed with. And so I'm going to talk to the article that nobody read but me. And that is, what I'm seeing is product managers have stopped being product managers. They have become designers and developers. And I strongly believe that as AI empowers developers, product management is going to be ever more important because we're the ones who are representing the business in the market. So let's assume and so back to the preamble you did on the article I was supposed to read, it sure feels familiar.
Yeah.
It's just, how many hype cycles do I have to live through? We saw this with the internet, we saw it with mobile, we saw it with so many things over the years, and it's going to all happen again. And I'm particularly irritated by the title, and I hope I don't offend anybody, the title of AI product manager. There's only product managers.
So maybe I can bridge the two topics, the two articles then. So Steve, totally agree. I think anyone who follows Melissa Perry on some of her things that she's been posting recently, which on one side is really kind of re-promoting her Build Trap book from several years ago, and how that book is now relevant again because of AI. Because like you said, or like I think you're implying, with these AI tools where now a product person could effectively design and build an application and spit it out there into the market, what does that mean then for all of that strategic thinking that a senior PM should have been doing to even answer, do I even need to put this out in the market? What does the go-to-market strategy look like for this? How does my product differentiate from everything else that everyone else is spitting out there? And I think that then ties into the article that Jason was talking about that I had reposted. That article, so whether it's the internet, .coms to the .bomb, right, which I lived through as well,
Mhm.
whether it's that or any other smaller thing that's happened in between or anything before the internet that was more physical based than digital based, I think they all follow this cycle where there's a level of hype of, ooh, there's this new technology. Companies look at that and say, I can save money doing this. I can do things faster doing this. Individuals say, great, this will make my job easier. And then we get to a point where it's like, oh, it wasn't yet ready for me to get all of those efficiencies and benefits from. Things tank a little bit. Then there's a refactoring of the tools. There's less tools available out there because a bunch of them failed, and things do get better, right? So that's the cycle in layman's terms.
Yeah.
And
At
so,
one point, you got to
yeah,
admit that the bill's going to come. I mean,
okay.
right now everything's free. Free is a wonderful thing, and at some point very soon they're going to go, "Wow, we're losing $1 billion a
Well,
day."
it has, yeah, it has to
Free.
because they're spending. So there, one of the great things about the article that I actually appreciated in comparing this to the .com boom is while there is a lot of money being spent, there is not the return on that money yet, and there might not ever be for the initial investment. That's basically creating the foundation, both in server, like data centers and servers and technologies, but also in lessons learned, like knowledge capital, if you will, on what works and what doesn't, right? It creates a foundation. It's basically an investment to what should work in the future. Just like after the dot bomb, then things got better because people were like, oh, okay, we need to do this type of thinking before we release something. We need to do product management became a thing really after that, along with agile and all of that, right? So I think we will hit that. I think right now we're looking at it, and unfortunately, we're also looking at the economy alongside of it, just like we did in the dot bomb days, and the article covers this. It will do something with the economy as well, as far as a dip, where people are going to eventually say, whoa, we've spent all this money. They're not getting the money back from it. Companies aren't getting the benefit of using the tools to the extent it was hyped. But then there'll be a rebound, right? And I think we just need to be prepared for it. I think the article does a really good job of laying out that from a product, technology, investment, and economy perspective, kind of all together. And it does it in a way of warning, but it doesn't do it in a way of like, oh my God, we're all going to die. Like, so, so I think that's the thing I really appreciate and why I did repost that article on this particular topic.
Thanks, Wes. Let me jump up. Blossom, you thrust your hand in the air, so let's jump to you next.
Hi, Blossom Onunuku. I'm Scrum certified product manager with experience at the DoD and Microsoft. And I want to double click on both of what Wes and Steve were saying. Wes mentioned profit. And I don't know if you all have played around with the product pass by, I forgot his name, John Leonard or something.
Lenny? Yep.
Yes, Lenny. Yes, yes.
Yep.
So I don't know if y'all have heard of that. Okay, great. It is $200 for 15 plus AI tools.
Yeah,
For
he's now valuing it at what, like $20,000 or $30,000 worth of,
Yep.
yeah.
crazy. I don't think that these companies are making money. They're not. They cannot. They cannot be making money. And to Wes's point, you're right. I don't think the data is there that says that they are making money. And then Steve, to your point, as someone who is in the market currently, I see a lot about AI product management. And I agree with you. I don't think there's such a thing as AI product management, but when there's so many different job descriptions calling for PMs who have experience in RAG, who can build prototype, which is fine. I've played around with Lovable and Replit, but I definitely think companies don't know what they're looking for. They just see a bright, shiny object and they're going to go full speed ahead on this AI PM thing, whatever that is.
Yeah, and
And
it's doubly confusing because they don't know what AI is, and they don't know what product management is. So when you put the two of these together, it's like this enormous null set. So it's kind of like, meanwhile, here's this hammer. What can I bang with it?
exactly. And what's funny is that I don't know if you all saw Meta recently laid off one of their AI units. Like hundreds of people were impacted who worked in the AI unit were just recently laid off in October. So it is very, very clear that these companies don't know what's going on. They don't know what they're doing, but it's unfortunate because we just kind of have to ride out this wave until the bubble bursts and then we see that boom later on.
Yeah, you're right. I see a lot of parallels to the 90s. I want to jump over to Mark. Mark, you lived through the 90s and you're seeing this, and you're probably having on a week-to-week basis probably more AI conversations than anybody else in this room right now. Just because of your work with the AI collective, talking to lots of people who are trying to learn and trying to innovate and all over the sides of we were talking about last night, just what's the definition of AI in the first place, somebody asked. How do we define what it is? What's your take on the state of the market right now?
Well, I don't think a lot of people even recognize the trough of disillusionment. And it's been stated in lots of different places that we're in that as AI industry. But that's if you look at the big picture. I think that there's a lot of smaller things that are happening. And if we're trying to go for moonshots, that trough is going to be a long period of time before we get that moonshot. And there might be after effects from that, right? And that's the big companies, the 1/3 of companies that are driving the S&P, right? It's Meta and Google, all those folks are Alphabet. I think that on a very smaller human level, it comes down to what we're doing with it. And a lot of our discussion last night centered on culture and whether or not the culture is ready to make adoptions to AI. So it's the company in adding AI, but it's all the people that have to use it and come to agreement on terms that we're using between all the silence. I see a lot of parallels to a lot of other industry booms like CX, for instance. CX was totally hijacked by technology. It started off as a good idea to keep customers and keep them happy, and therefore you have good longevity and predictable revenue, right? ARR. But within the context of CX, all these technology companies came in particular, one huge survey platform. It says, we're not a survey platform. We're a touch point management, multi octopus. It was going to go to the stock market with a 1 billion valuation. Everybody in research laughed at it until S&P came over the top with an $8 billion cash offer and bought it out. And that became the go-to. Now they've bought out everyone in that business. So I don't see a lot of mergers, acquisitions yet from this article. I see a lot of intertangling of investments. So, within the idea of OpenAI investing in a gazillion things, within all these different companies investing in each other and the infrastructure, it's still not there to support the kind of volume that we're going to need and the kind of power we're going to need to get to true agentic and true generative AI. But we're still not quite there. Anyhow, that's my thoughts. And only other thought I have is boom, bubble, bust, boom sounds kind of like a good EDM song. And the trough of disillusionment should be the band.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. But I think everyone is familiar with the Gartner hype cycle graphic. If you're not, let me share that with you just so you see what we're talking about. I think on Zoom you should be able to see it. I think if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see it in just a moment. There it comes. So Gartner has this thing they call the hype cycle, and their general talk track is you have this innovation trigger that starts a new technology. You reach this peak of inflated expectations where everybody's all hyped up about something. overhyped about it, and then you slide into this trough of disillusionment where people have made investments, and those investments aren't getting a good ROI, and they're starting to say, this thing was just another flash in the pan. This was a waste of our time, it was a waste of our money. People get fired. And then you move into this slope of enlightenment and finally reach the plateau of productivity. So Gartner in June put out this this hype cycle around the state of AI in general. And you can see we've got right up here in June, the peak of inflated expectations, AI agents right at the tip top. Foundation models and synthetic data, edge AI and generative AI are sliding into the trough of disillusionment, but we're starting to see, they're saying we're starting to see some growth and some real value coming out of things like cloud AI services, knowledge graphs, model distillation. We talked a little bit about knowledge graphs last night at the AI Collective meetup, where we were talking about really classifying and organizing what you do know to make it more usable. Now, I don't know that I fully agree with this personally. And there's a reason for that. First of all, I think in the case of generative AI, especially generative AI, this is not a new technology. People have been working on this technology since the 50s. So the innovation has been happening for a very long time. Now, we had a mass consumer adoption over the last 3 years. And that's really important because that became another innovation trigger. So I kind of think if you really look at it, there may be two hype cycles going on concurrently, where on one you have the consumer hype cycle, and then another you have the technology hype cycle, where we may be more likely already in the trough of disillusionment for a lot of things and on the verge of coming out. I'm kind of optimistic on that front. The mass consumer adoption has thrown a monkey wrench into it in the same way that I see a slight difference when we compare the current AI bubble to the 90s internet bubble. And here's where I see the difference. And I am not a professional investor. There are lots of things that I'm just looking and reading the tea leaves as I see them. But we had something else that we don't talk about in the 90s. In 1975, there was a big deregulation in the stock market that deregulated commissions and allowed more people, more individuals to make investments. In the late 90s, online stockbrokers came online with really low trade costs, and you had a massive explosion of day traders entering the market, individual investors, unsophisticated investors, inflating internet stocks to 80 and 100 and 200 and 300 price PE ratios. And we don't have that now. That has settled down. We've still got a lot of day traders out there, get me wrong, but we don't have that same level of overinflated, unsophisticated investor dominating the market and the trends. So, and even this article talked about the PE ratios are not as severe as they were in the internet tech during the internet tech bubble. They're much lower than they were. They're much more sane. NASDAQ is, I think they said, at a 34 average PE, which is a little bit higher than my 80s teaching taught me it ought to be, closer to 20. But it's much more reasonable compared to 200 and 300 that we would see in the 90s with these totally overinflated valuations. So I'm a little bit more optimistic that yes, there's a bubble, but it's not nearly as severe and we're not due for the same kind of crash that we were due for before. It's been very well publicized that OpenAI took in about $4 billion of revenue in the last quarter but did it on $13.6 billion in expenses. So we know they're upside down. That's not a secret. It's not hidden. The scale is massive, but we also know that we can see the real value of the innovation that some of these companies that are upside down are creating. It's not like I put the example in the chat of buying pencils for 10 cents and selling them for a penny and making it up on volume. This is not the same thing. This is companies investing heavily in innovation in transformative technologies. And yes, there's some overinvestment in companies. Blossom's example of Facebook is Meta is a really good example. Yeah, we overinvested and overindexed on some things, so we had to let some people go. I don't think that's indicative of a market bust coming, personally. That's my take. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, so two things. I'm not going to sit here and, try to be a prophet towards, is there going to be a bust? How big's the bust? I think though, I somewhat agree too. There could be two curves going on. I think there's one big difference though for me is there's two other factors at play. So related to your two curve scenario, the one factor that comes into play is yes, they started working on this in the 50s, but it really wasn't until the past 10, maybe 15 years that the infrastructure and technology and also the workforce was available to really start bringing this into mass and making the leaps and bounds that they've made now. Hence the now consumerism of it, right? The other factor though is, and we did not obviously have this with the .com. Well, we had it, but it was much more controlled or small. Is and I'm not saying this to be controversial or even political or any of that, but the hype, because we use that word in the beginning today, the hype is so much easier to do these days because of social media and the internet. And it has even changed the way like traditional news programming operates. That we have basically echo chambered the hype in a way that was never even possible back during the .com .bomb era, and certainly not during the 50s era, right? So that to me is a huge contributing factor to like how big, good, and bad this could be, right? Because we can just keep hyping and hyping and hyping, including the CEOs of these big companies like OpenAI and whatever. I'm not going to name them all, but it's the hype. The hype, like the way the hype is happening to me is problematic because it's to a scale and a level we've never experienced before.
I really liked in the article that it discusses the investors had a visualization of what the investing plan was. Like there was published graphics in the past month to help investors visualize this. And these graphics were confusing. These graphics were very, very confusing. And honestly, sometimes I ask, can you blame these companies can you blame them for not wanting to be left out, for not wanting to be the next BlackBerry? BlackBerry missed the touchscreen era. So can you blame them for, wanting to be a part of this race? And I think what Brian mentioned in the chat, the conversation he had with somebody, an exec said, we're already behind in this AI arms race. And Brian responds, behind whom? We don't know, but I think these companies just don't want to be behind. Even if there's no race, they just don't want to be left in the dust. And so I just hate that this hype is also a result of people losing their jobs. People go into AI and they might be let go, or people just, regular individuals who aren't AI focused are being let go because the company thinks that AI might be able to replace their jobs. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong.
Today, please welcome Dina Catherville. He's an AI product manager at Deluxe, and he has been deep in the day-to-day challenges of fast AI engineering cycles and slow product decision loops. And he's kind of built a perspective. And basically, AI engineering has accelerated dramatically. We can talk about the hype around AI, but there is no doubt that there are some products out there that are helping great engineers deliver great work faster. And your teams are accelerating dramatically, and product decision velocity has stayed about the same. So it's creating this widening gap. And Dina has a take on how to deal with that and how to manage to that. So we wanted to invite Dina to join us today and talk about his view on the product manager's operating model for the AI era. And I hope you all enjoy this. I've enjoyed getting to know Dina over the last several months, and I think you'll enjoy this conversation as well. So welcome, Dina. I will hand it over to you and let you take the reins.
Awesome. Hey, Jason, thanks for having me, and amazing discussion on the AI cycle. Really glad to be hearing different sides of the argument and then taking away some of the perspective or forming the perspective to that. I did know Steve and Jay Blossom mentioned that their perspective on the title AI product management. But to me, I see a product manager who understands AI in depth and then see where you can apply AI and where not. So that's the perspective you take on it. I mean, do you really need the AI tag? Maybe not, but I think it's part of the hype cycle I would have to imagine with, as people are talking about. But anyway, I'll share my screen and kind of talk about what I have with me here today. I'll kind of, as a product manager, will kind of set the context of the problem, and we'll spend good amount of time there before we dive deep into some of the solution page that I have here today. And just want to kind of give like a quick overview before. So this is a solution that's formed out of my experience and perspective, right? And I would be super happy to kind of take some of the inputs that you guys have some conversation around it, and see how we can actually evolve that model further, right? So that's really the idea. So I'll get into the topic. So I came to the States to get into product management. I did my MBA in 2022 before I moved to the product role that I'm currently at. Back then, AI product management wasn't a thing, right? We had products that use AI, but AI native products, as people call today, wasn't even a thing. But suddenly we realized that the pace of the innovation, the AI innovation, has become astronomical, right? We started interacting with OpenAI, the ChatGPT, their first product with that 3.5 model. And it was more like a conversational chatbot. You ask a question, it's going to respond to you. But soon these models got into the capability that we call it as reasoning capability, right? It can think. It can, based on whatever query that it put in, it can basically plan and then give you a reasoned response as a human would. And as a part of the next step in the cycle, we started giving the capability of tools to these models so it can not only reason and explain, it has also started to take actions because now they can access databases, APIs, or whatnot, right? And then now we call it as agentic AI, where the technology has become much closer to human in some sense in certain areas. I would be very cautious and clearly say definitely not in all the areas, but it's becoming more and more autonomous, right? So the phase of AI innovation has been astronomical. And it's not just the innovation within the AI technology, but also the products that we see around it. We have AI native products that can help you build full stack application from end to end, right? You can basically come up with your PRD and then create your full stack application. And you also have agentic AI browsers today. We can also have full stack AI testing tools. So the product really has become extremely vertical, where you're able to see that this technology is being applied across different areas and different industries. So we definitely can see that the engineering velocity has driven, because just in the 3 years, the number of products that we see in this category has been never seen before, right? So, but let's take a step back and understand what is the cause for this, right? Because you're talking about the engineering velocity is accelerated. Yeah, we really need to understand like what has led to the movement as we speak. And the first factor that comes to my mind is the power of compounding, right? People invested in GPUs, which is what is critical for this technology to run, is because we had cloud era that happened like a decade ago. Without the cloud era, we would not be able to run these heavy workloads that let you to process this gigantic information and give you the information that you need.